TRX hinge, single arm, level 1. Adjust the suspension trainer to mid-length and place in single handle mode. Stand underneath the anchor point, one hand on the handle, back straight, hips and knees bent as if you're picking up a heavy object in one arm or performing a single arm deadlift. With the core engaged, shoulders pulled down and back, extend forward up onto the balls of your feet, arms stay straight out in front of your chest. Hold the plank for a count, resisting rotation in the shoulders and hips, torso stays tight. Focus on maintaining a strong plank throughout. Tension remains on the suspension trainer throughout the entire movement. TRX hinge, single arm, level 2. Start from behind the anchor point. Anchor point is in front of your head. Same starting position. Core engaged, shoulders down and back. Hands slightly in front of the knees. Lean forward, extend out to a deeper position, requiring more stability in the shoulder and core to resist rotation at this deeper angle. Return by driving hips back and bending knees. Spine and torso remains straight and stiff throughout the exercise. TRX hinge, single arm, level 3. Adjust the suspension trainer to fully lengthened. Stand behind the anchor point in front of your head. Start from knee bent, hip bent position, core engaged. Extend forward to deep position. Hold the plank. Resist rotation in shoulders and hips. Drive back to starting position by hinging at the hips, bending at the knees, leading back with the hips. Reset and re-engage core between each repetition. Focus on smooth, controlled movement. TRX hinge, single arm, level 4. Level 4 begins the same way as level 3, with an added strength and mobility challenge at the bottom. Start from hip and knee bent position, straight back, core engaged, tension on suspension trainer the entire time. Roll out to the single arm plank. Lower yourself down into a clock press. Bring yourself back up, lifting the hand up, holding the plank briefly, hinging back to starting position, resetting the core and shoulder girdle between each rep. The focus is on a slow, controlled movement, resisting rotation in the single arm plank, holding each position briefly, getting the most out of the strength from each position, and hinging back to starting position. If you fatigue during this level, you can walk forward towards the anchor point to reduce the vector, or you can take the clock press and turn it into a chest press at the bottom. Rest as much as you need between repetitions. TRX hinge, single arm, level 5. Levels 4 and 5 are advanced moves and should only be attempted after mastering levels 1, 2, and 3. Begin level 5 the same way as level 4. Stand behind the anchor point, suspension training fully lengthened. Roll out into the single arm plank. Lower down into your clock press. Come back up, hold the plank, and add a rotation, reaching the free hand up towards the ceiling. Return to the single arm plank and hinge back. Reset, re-engage, rest as long as needed between reps. Slow, controlled movements out, mastering each step with control. Shoulder girdle stays packed, core stays engaged the entire time. Rest as much as needed between each repetition. Focus on slow, controlled movement. Hold the rotation for a brief moment, return to the plank, and finish with the hinge. TRX hip abduction, level 1. Adjust suspension trainer to mid-calf level. Put heels in, lay on the ground facing the anchor point. Start with a strong core. Lift your hips up so you have a straight line from shoulders, hips, knees, ankles. Spread your feet as far apart as possible and bring them back together. Lower hips back to the ground between each repetition and reset your core. Focus on keeping the back straight and hips strong throughout the exercise. TRX hip abduction level 2. On this level, all the standards remain the same. Strong core, straight line from shoulders, hips, knees, ankles. Spread your feet as wide apart as possible without letting your hips drop to the ground. Return and maintain your hips up the entire time. Focus on breathing in control, keeping your hips, knees extended the entire time. TRX hip abduction level 3. In this level, you'll maintain the same standard of movement and you will add an isometric hold with your feet spread apart. Start with a strong core in your supine plank position. Spread your feet as wide apart as possible. Hold, bring back under control. Don't let your hips drop, and spread your feet again. Focus on a strong core and feel the extra contraction in those hips as you hold your feet out as wide as you can. Breathe normally the entire exercise. TRX wide stance hip hinge. Adjust the suspension trainer to mid-length. Stand facing the anchor point. Feet wide, toes pointing straight ahead, arms extended in front of chest, hips fully extended, torso tall. Keep tension on the suspension trainer the entire time. Hinge forward at the hips, dropping head between the arms. Push hands towards anchor point. Drive hips back away from anchor point. Maintain tension in core as you press your hips through back to the starting position. Re-engage core, pulling shoulders down and back between each repetition. Focus on torso remaining tall and stiff, legs remaining extended, and hinging through the hips. TRX hip press, level 1. Adjust the suspension trainer to mid-calf level and start ground facing the anchor point with heels in. Keep your legs straight, feet directly underneath the anchor point. Engage your core and use your hips to lift your hips and lower back up off the deck. Focus on maintaining strong core, straight legs, and drive this movement from your posterior chain. TRX hip press level 2. On this level, your feet are directly underneath the anchor point with knees and hips bent. This will give more focus into the hip muscles of the gluteals and the low back to create this movement. Start by engaging your core, driving your hips up, the goal being shoulders, hips, knees in a straight line. Focus on trying to keep your feet in the same place the entire time. Reset at the bottom by pulling your knees back on top of your hips and drive this movement through your hips. TRX hip press level 3. In this level, you'll keep your hands up off the ground and the movement standard remains the same, adding more of a stability challenge for the core. Start with your feet directly underneath the anchor point, engage the core, and drive your hips up towards the sky as high as possible, focusing on hamstrings and glutes to drive the movement. Concentrate on keeping your feet in the same place directly underneath the anchor point. Reset every time your hips come down to make sure your knees are on top of your hips. TRX hip press, single leg, level 1. Adjust the suspension trainer to mid-calf length and place in single handle mode. Lay on the ground facing the anchor point with one heel in, suspended, the opposite leg, foot flat on the ground, back flat. Initiate the movement by extending through both hips, lifting the hips up, keeping the core engaged. Concentrate on keeping the suspended foot in the same place underneath the anchor point throughout the exercise. Use the grounded leg to spot yourself and create full range of motion. TRX hip press, single leg, level 2. On this level, your unsuspended leg will mirror your suspended leg, maintaining the same form, resisting rotation throughout the movement. Extend through both hips, loading into the suspended leg. Focus on keeping the heels directly underneath the anchor point, not letting your knee extend, focusing on the contraction in the hip and the core. TRX hip press, single leg, level 3. On this level, you'll use a cross bracing technique to increase resistance as well as range of motion. Brace the unsuspended knee with the arm on the opposite side of the body. Perform the hip press with the single leg, pushing the knee into the hand and hand into the knee, creating more force through the core and greater extension through the suspended hip. Reset between each repetition as needed to ensure quality contraction. Once again, the foot remains in place underneath the anchor point. TRX hip throw, level 1. Adjust the suspension trainer to mid-length. Stand facing the anchor point, leaning back as if to do a low row. Keep the body planked and perform a low row, focusing on a moving plank with hips extended. The movement should initiate with shoulders coming down and back, finishing with the elbows. TRX hip throw, level 2. This level adds a rotary component to the row. You'll initiate the row the same way, keeping a moving plank. You'll perform a row with the left arm demonstrated here, coming across with the right arm, adding rotation through the hips and shoulders. It's a row, finishing with rotation. Focus on one arm performing the low row, with the opposite arm pulling in and reaching across the body as if grabbing someone and twisting to throw them. TRX hip throw, level 3. Once you have mastered the movement at an easier angle, overshorten the suspension trainer and work from an inverted position. Initiate by pulling the shoulders down and back, extending through the hips, and then using the same motion of performing a row with one arm and rotating across with the opposite arm. This movement can be performed one side at a time for a required number of reps or alternating sides. TRX incline plank, level 1. Adjust the suspension trainer to mid-calf length, place in single handle mode. Place one foot in the foot cradle. You'll be on the ground facing away from the anchor point. Walk yourself back to an appropriate, easy angle, hips slightly above shoulders. Engage the core, lift the unsuspended leg up, even with the suspended leg. Press shoulders and arms down into the ground. Maintain a strong plank, hips fully extended, resisting rotation and any flexion or extension in the torso and hips. Lower the free leg and walk back to starting position. TRX incline plank, level 2. For this level, you will walk yourself back to a steeper angle. Your unsuspended leg will remain on the ground throughout this exercise. The focus of this exercise is creating more of a challenge in the shoulder girdle at a steeper angle, as well as more of a plank challenge for the core. In addition, you will be developing strength and mobility in the hips to enable you to walk back for a steeper angle for level 3 and for the incline press. TRX incline plank, level 3. Starting the same way you did for levels 1 and 2. Pull the shoulders down and back, engage the core with one foot in the suspension trainer. Walk yourself back to a steep angle. Set the shoulders, engage the core, lift the free leg up even with the suspended leg. Focus on maintaining the standard of a strong plank, ears, shoulders, hips, knees, ankles. Press the ground away from you. Return to the starting position by lowering the free leg, walking yourself back to the starting position. TRX incline plank, level 4. Start with both legs even, one leg suspended in the suspension trainer, the free leg remaining next to the suspended leg throughout the exercise. Walk yourself back to a steep angle using your arms only. Find the appropriate level. Pull the shoulders down and back. Engage the core, hitting the standard for the plank. Walking yourself back to starting position with the free leg elevated the entire time. TRX incline press, level 1. Adjust the suspension trainer to mid-calf length and put in single handle mode. Put one foot in through the foot cradle. You'll be on the ground, facing away from the anchor point, head directly underneath anchor point. Spot yourself with one leg down to set your core bring that unsuspended leg up even with the suspended leg, and from a strong plank position, perform an incline pressing movement. The focus is on maintaining a strong plank while driving through the shoulders. TRX incline press level 2. The focus of this level is to reinforce a strong incline plank while spotting yourself with the unsuspended leg through the press. With one leg lifted, the unsuspended leg on the ground, drive yourself down into a pressing motion, drive up through your shoulders, bring the unsuspended leg up into the air, focusing on that plank. In addition to upper body strength and core strength, you're also able to work on hip mobility for this movement to ease you in and out of level 3 of the incline press. TRX incline press level 3. Once you've developed your shoulder stability and mobility, as well as your core stability and hip mobility to be able to move into, out of, and perform the incline press, you're ready for the full incline press. With the suspension trainer in single handle mode, put one foot in, walk yourself back to as steep an angle that feels comfortable for you. Bring the unsuspended leg up even with the suspended leg. Engage that core, shoulders stay down and back, and drive yourself down towards the ground with the goal being to have your head almost touch the ground with every repetition. TRX inverted row level 1. Adjust the suspension trainer to fully shortened, stand facing the anchor point, and walk in to a challenging angle. Level 1 does not require you to go totally inverted. It gets you to focus on maintaining a plank during a strong low row. Focus on shoulders down and back, hips stay extended, body moving as a plank as you pull up and lower down under control. TRX inverted row level 2. Over shorten the suspension trainer to allow you to achieve an inverted position, chest below anchor point, knees bent to 90 degrees, feet flat on the floor, body in a plank position. Perform the inverted row to standard, straight line from ears, shoulders, hips, knees. Core remains engaged the entire time. Initiate the movement by shoulders down and back and finishing with the arms. TRX inverted row level 3. With your legs extended in this position, there's an additional resistant load here, as well as more of a core stability challenge. Find that supine plank position, hips extended, core engaged, toes pulled up from the ground, pivoting on the heels, and performing an inverted row with slight pause at the top. TRX inverted row single arm level 1. Adjust the suspension trainer to over shortened length and place in single handle mode. Lay on the ground facing the anchor point, directly underneath the anchor point, holding the handle in one hand with knees bent and feet flat. Initiate the movement by pulling the shoulders down and back and extending through the hips. Return to the ground for a brief rest and reset between every repetition. Focus on extending the hips, then engaging the shoulder girdle before the row begins. TRX inverted row single arm level 2. On this level, once you lift from the ground initially for the first repetition by extending at the hips and pulling the shoulders down and back, you'll complete as many single arm rows as you can without resting in between repetitions. The goal is to resist the hips and shoulders from tilting and rotating during the exercise. TRX inverted row single arm level 3. Performing this exercise with legs fully extended greatly increases the strength requirement and load of this exercise. Start underneath the anchor point, lift your hips up to a plank, pull yourself up as high as you can without rotating in the shoulders and the hips. Come down and rest in between each repetition as needed. TRX long torso stretch. Adjust the suspension trainer to mid-length, stand facing the anchor point, bring right leg over left so toes and hips are pointing to the left, Shoulders remain square to anchor point. Engage core, drive the hips back, letting the head drop between the arms, looking for a long stretch down the left side of the body into the left hip. Return to starting position by pressing the hips forward and repeat. Focus on slow, controlled movements, looking to gain length in the torso, the shoulders, and across the left hip. Take advantage of the single anchor point by animating the stretch, moving your arms and shoulders to create mobility and flexibility throughout the body in a transverse plane. TRX low row to chest press, level 1. Adjust the suspension trainer to fully shortened. Stand facing the anchor point, holding handle in each hand. Pull your hands to your chest at the top of a row position. Engage your core so you become a moving plank. Lower yourself back as if doing a low row. Pull your hands back to your chest, keeping tension on the suspension trainer. Drive yourself forward into a chest press. Drive yourself back up. Hinge at the hips, leaning yourself back to a row. The goal is to have this movement flow as one continuous movement from a row, tension on the suspension trainer the entire time, into a chest press. There should never be slack in the suspension trainer throughout this exercise. You become a moving plank for the row and a moving plank for the chest press. TRX low row to chest press, level 2. Adjust the suspension trainer to mid-length. This will give you a larger range of motion that you'll work through. Start with shoulders down and back, core engaged. Let yourself lean back into that low row. Keep the core engaged as you drive through. Push your hands down the side of your body to slightly in front of your body. You'll roll out to a deeper chest press than you did in level 1. Focus on hip hinging, keeping that spine nice and straight, driving those hips back as your knees bend. Back to a standing position, into the row. Your core remains engaged throughout the exercise, never having slack on the suspension trainer, never having slack in your core. The focus here is high tension throughout the entire movement. As you lengthen the suspension trainer, you increase the difficulty of this exercise. TRX low row to chest press, level 3. Adjust the suspension trainer to fully lengthened. Start by leaning back with your body planked up, hips fully extended, hands at your chest. Lower yourself down and controlled as a moving plank into the low row. Pull yourself back up, keep tension on suspension trainer, pushing your hands down to the side of your body, out to in front of your knees. Extend your hips out to the chest press position. Find a plank at the top. Hip hinge yourself back up and repeat the motion. Keep tension on suspension trainer the entire time. Hold your plank at the top of the press. It becomes a moving plank through the chest press. Drive your hips up towards the ceiling with a slight bend in your knees to bring yourself back to the standing position. Focus this as a moving plank in both a rowing, a pressing, and a hip hinge movement. TRX lunge level 1, 2 hands down. Adjust the suspension trainer to mid-calf level. In single handle mode or putting one foot through both foot cradles, start about 3 to 4 feet in front of the anchor point. Have both hands on the ground, either side of your foot, and then stand up by driving that leg through the ground. The goal here is to get your shoulders and hips to move at the same time, driving your strength and power from your posterior chain, your hamstrings, your glute, and your back. TRX lunge level 2, 1 hand down. On this level, whichever foot is planted on the ground, the opposite hand will go down to provide support at the bottom. In this case, the left leg is on the ground. The right hand will go towards the ground to provide support, and that left elbow works inside that left knee, slightly pushing that left knee out to open up the hip as you perform the movement to standard. Hips and shoulders move at the same time, driving strength and power from the hamstring and glute of the grounded leg. TRX lunge, level 3, no hands down. Having set your movement standard in level 1 and 2 by letting your hips drop at least to knee level and driving the strength and power from hamstrings and glutes, you'll perform this movement with no hands coming down. Focus on keeping the torso nice and tall, the grounded leg heel driving into the ground, and shoulders and hips moving together. Let the suspended knee drive back and down towards the ground and then together at the top. TRX lunge, level 4, with hop. Having strengthened your TRX lunge form through levels 1, 2, and 3, you can add a hop to this movement, increasing the metabolic demand and the agility. Make sure you focus on the same form you've developed over the first 3 levels. Start by torso nice and tall, drive through the hips and hamstrings into a ballistic movement at the top, and control on the landing down into the next repetition. TRX mountain climber, level 1. Adjust the suspension trainer to mid-calf length. Start ground facing away from the anchor point with toes in. Bring yourself up into a forearm plank position, legs fully extended. Bring one leg in at a time, knee towards the chest, with the opposite leg staying straight the entire time. Drive your hips up towards the sky as that knee comes in, staying stable in your core. TRX mountain climber, level 2. On this level, the mountain climber is performed from the hands position, requiring more stability in the shoulder girdle and more of a stability challenge for the whole body. Extend your legs out, finding your strong plank position. Draw one knee into the chest as far as possible, letting your hips drive up towards the sky. Focus on a strong core, shoulders staying down and back the entire time. It's not a speed movement, it's a strength movement. Focus on keeping the straight leg straight and the mobile leg mobile. TRX mountain climber, level 3. Level 3 adds an additional strength and conditioning component on top of the standard of a strong plank with hip mobility and stability. Start by bringing yourself to a stable, strong hand plank. Focus on one knee coming to the chest, the opposite leg staying straight. Cycle through 2 repetitions each leg and add a push-up. So it becomes cycle 1, cycle 2, and push-up. The focus here is maintaining a strong plank throughout the set. You change the plank challenge from a cycling on the legs to a strength move from the upper body for full core engagement and full core strength. TRX overhead back extension, level 1. Adjust the suspension trainer to mid-length. Stand facing the anchor point, feet slightly in front of hips, arms extended out in front of you, handles at chest height. The focus of this level is to make sure the core stays engaged with a nice long spine going into hip flexion and hip extension. Treat this as a standing hip press, hinging back and then extending through, keeping tension on the suspension trainer the entire time for core stiffness and hip mobility. TRX overhead back extension, level 2. Level 2 starts with a tall standing posture, arms overhead in the finish of a Y fly, driving those arms back with an engaged core, high tension on the TRX. This should be the toughest part of the exercise. Hip hinge back, head drops below straight arms, and return to starting position by driving the shoulders back and hips forward. The top of this position, high tension on the TRX and high engagements of shoulder, core, hips, and legs. TRX overhead back extension, level 3. Starting with tension on the suspension trainer again and high tension through the body. You're gonna have isometric holds at the top and bottom of level 3. Hinge back, tall torso, long legs, reset and come back to the top, trying to pull the suspension trainer off the anchor point with high tension at the top, making sure the mobility takes place at the hips, shoulder girdle is pulled down and back, and integrating an overhead pull with hip extension. TRX overhead squat, level 1. Adjust the suspension trainer to mid-length and bring the foot cradles over your arms and up to your armpits. Stand facing the anchor point, walk your feet forward, so you're leaning back at a comfortable angle. Adjust your foot position so at the bottom of this squat exercise, you feel like you're in a typical squat pattern. As you extend back up, you'll lean back almost as in a hack squat position. Focus on torso staying nice and tall and extending through the hips. An alternative setup for this exercise, should the foot cradles not fit over your arms, is to put the suspension trainer into single handle mode, run it underneath your armpits, and perform the same exercise. Once again, the focus is on the bottom position, feeling like a nice strong squat, and extending up and out of it by driving through the hips. Torso stays nice and tall throughout the exercise. TRX overhead squat, level 2. For this level, you'll increase the challenge of this exercise by holding the handles in your hands, arms fully extended up overhead, keeping tension on the suspension trainer the entire time by driving those shoulders down and back. Lower yourself into an overhead squat position through whatever range of motion is comfortable for you, keeping tension on the suspension trainer by driving those shoulders back and keeping the back, the core, the hips, the legs engaged the entire time. TRX overhead squat, level 3. Instead of holding the handles on this level, you will take the foot cradles and put them over the back of your hands with your thumb underneath the foot cradle to support it. Keep your hands open, drive the shoulders down and back, and continue to perform the overhead squat, keeping full body tension the entire time, feet flat on the ground, driving through the heels and extending through the hips. TRX pike, level 1. Adjust the suspension trainer to mid-calf length. You'll be on the ground facing away from the anchor point with toes in. Hands underneath shoulders, almost in a push-up position, knees resting on the ground. Find a nice strong plank, extend those legs, hold that plank, and then drive your hips towards the ceiling, head between your arms, your goal being to get your hips right on top of your shoulders. For level 1, you'll come down and rest in between each repetition, finding that plank, going up into a strong press, back down to a plank, and then a quick rest. Reset to plank, to pike, under control back down to plank, rest on the knees. TRX pike, level 2. On this level, you will continue to do pikes without stopping, meeting the same standard you set in level 1. Start with a nice strong plank on your hands first with an active core. Look for a straight line, ears, shoulders, hips, knees, ankles. Take the hips to the ceiling, head between the arms, come back down, find that plank, and return back up. Be focused on a strong core during your transition from down to up and up to down, hitting that plank each time. TRX pike, level 3. On this level, you'll add an isometric hold at the top of the pike for an additional strength and resistance challenge. Start by finding your strong plank on your hands to standard, ears, shoulders, hips, knees, ankles. Drive the hips up, right on top of the shoulders, head between the arms. Hold for a count or two, and down under control back to your plank. Reset, drive the hips back up, iso hold, bring yourself down under control. At the top of the pike, think that you're pushing the ground away from you, almost as doing a military press. Return at the end of the set and rest by knees dropping to the ground.